Hi, I'm Julian, and this is the WLB podcast.
Several centuries have passed since the great battle of Kurukshetra. The tales of valor and bravery and the triumph of good over evil from that time of gods and mighty warriors are just that, tales. Stories parents tell their children to instill bravery in them, for they live in a cruel world. No avatar protects the land of Bharat. As evil in the form of demons, sorcerers, bandits, and despotic rulers, and all manners of creatures that dwell in the darkness of hell, are unleashed upon its innocent denizens. Two souls walk this hell on earth, a brother and a sister, a warrior monk and a ranger. Born in the lineage of Shataniga, one of the sons of the mighty Pandavas, they are on a quest to erase a curse laid upon their family. Nothing about this adventure will be easy. Heirs of the Pandavas.
Heirs of the Pandavas was a show produced by WYN Studio, a new age content startup. And for today's episode, I am delighted to have as our guest Souniya Khurana, the co-founder of WYN Studio. I stumbled upon this workshop by Vijay on podcast and discovered the achievements of WYN Studio, all of their shows, the latest funding of 2 crores it received, and the massive fan following, I must say, for all of its shows. Thank you, Souniya, for accepting my invite. And I'm sure, like me, everyone else is also eager to hear about your journey of starting and running WYN Studio. Thank you for being here with me today.
I'm glad and I'm very happy to be here, Julian. It's always good to be speaking to young leaders and people who are dynamic like you, who are keen to explore conversations and deep dive into what's really happening around the world. So I'm really happy and really grateful to be here. Thank you for bringing me on.
Thank you. So, could you begin with a quick introduction on how did you start in this entire process, or were you always planning to become a co-founder of a business, or introduce yourself on that?
Yeah. So, honestly, the way my journey began is that of course, after many years of work with corporates, with startups, almost a decade, there was a time that before I did WYN Studio, there was a time I also had another entrepreneurial journey or venture, so to say, which I failed at building because possibly for the lack of mentorship, for the lack of the kind of ecosystem that exists right now. So, yeah, I could not really build it up the way I would have wanted to. And that was back in 2015 or 2016. After that, I started actually working on ground, looking at building a startup community. So, looking at connecting with startups in tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, and trying to build an ecosystem for them by introducing them to mentors, making them helping them become investable, and then connecting with investors, finding collaborations within the network. So, all of these things were something that I'd started working on because I wanted to also increase my understanding of how the ecosystem really works. While I did that is when I figured out that startups, especially in tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, and that's the case actually in a lot of cases, that they may have a great offering, they may have a great product, they may have a great service, and possibly a great market potential. However, what they lacked was a great narrative. So a startup or any venture, we may have something which is very innovative, which is very disruptive, which is very what the market needs, kind of a product or an offering.
Mhm.
But if the narrative, the story does not match up, then it is bound to not really go to the market the way it should have.
Cool.
And that's what I understood on my journey while I was trying to build this community called India Network. Having
Mm.
said that, I realized that possibly there is scope for something to be done.
Mhm.
And after doing so, after doing that for a long time, after trying to figure out what really needs to be done, it was in 2019 July that I attended this workshop that you spoke about. I attended this workshop by Bijay Gautam, who's now my co-founder
Mhm.
in WYN Studio, somewhere in the Himalayas, somewhere in the mountains. And when that workshop concluded, it was the last 45 minutes of our conversation
Mhm.
that made us realize that, why not explore something together. I'm very excited as a person about stories, about narratives, about really ensuring that people put their best story outward and
Mhm.
forward, and trying to help them build that.
Mhm.
And Vijay is somebody who's all about podcast. He's been doing podcasting for such a long time, very respected in the industry, very known for his content and the way he has been spear leading it, despite the fact that there was a time that people did not even know what a podcast is. So that's where we decided that, what, maybe we should try collaborating, join our strengths, and do something together. And that's how we created this new age content studio called WYN Studio. So, WYN, interestingly, a lot of people do not know WYN stands for What's Your Narrative, which, if you translate into Hindi, is Kahani Kya Hai?
True. Hmm.
So that's what Wine Studio started off as a new age content studio. And it was in September 2019 that we got registered, and November 2019 when we onboarded our first employee and the founding team member in a way.
Mhm.
So from there on, I think there has been no looking back. It has been a interesting ride so far. It has had its own peaks and it has its own valleys where we have
Mhm.
trying to figure out ki, okay, what next. We're not able to
Mhm.
figure out ki, there's pandemic, and brands are of course going to just retrench when it comes to their branding and communications and marketing budgets. So where do we stand? How will we really fare through the 2020 and the
Mhm.
next year and the next? But I think we've managed fine, from a team of two co-founders expanding to three, now a team of 10. I
Wow.
think it's a great sign. The
Mhm.
universe, the people around us, the board, to the investors, everybody has shown that kind of a confidence, which has told us that, what, all right,
Mhm.
we're doing good stuff. So let's keep on it.
True.
And
True.
yeah, that's been the journey of Wine so
Wow.
far.
Amazing. I think currently, like what you mentioned was every company needs to connect with their customers so much that because there's a lot of competition, customers would just switch to another brand the moment they find something else that resonates with them. So when you said that every brand needs a narrative, they need to build that trust with every customer. Even if you're selling fans or mixies, they still have to have a story, and you need to still build that connection with your customers. That's amazing. I mean, I didn't know the backstory, and that's really, really one of a wonderful story that you've mentioned. So, in your entire research of tier two and tier three cities, have you interacted with like what are the different domains that you have come across that where unless you had stepped in, they had no clue to about what their mission, vision, value statements were? Like, could you mention any one example that?
So this was long back,
Mm-hmm.
2017 or 2018, that I remember we met a startup in Akola,
Mm-hmm.
and which is deep down in Maharashtra. It's a small town, but has its own history. And Akola or maybe Jalgaon, either of the two. But
Mm-hmm.
when we spoke to this startup, which was in back then in the edutech domain,
Mhm.
and trying to ease the access of knowledge for
Mhm.
people who are IAS and UPSC aspirants or civil service
Mhm.
aspirants. And what they said was very striking, Julian, that there was a conversation that we had, a very candid conversation, trying to figure out what are their challenges, how are they really dealing with it. So this guy said that, ma'am, what happens is that while we have come a certain journey, while we have traversed a certain path, what really happens is that when we start from point A to point B, we go ahead with whatever limited knowledge that we have or whatever we are able to access off the internet, and we continue to ride on that path, but little knowing that the path that we are headed to is is a very long distance. There's
Mhm.
possibility a shorter route, or there's possibly a way to do it in a different way to reach there. So
Mhm.
basically, अगर आप point A से point B पे, when you can go by a flight, why would
Mhm.
you choose to go by a car?
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to just experience and just enjoy the journey, right?
Mhm.
Because going a longer path in a startup journey also means expanding on the time to reach your market.
Yeah.
And startups are all about speed and scale. So
Yeah.
that's where he said that, we wish that we had an ecosystem like this when we started,
Mm.
when we could get access to mentors who could guide us, when we could get people who are a part of, a similar vision or of a similar mindset where we could collaborate. Because right now, even to find the right resources, the right partners is tough,
Mm.
because we are
Yeah.
again in a limited, from the perspective of
Mhm.
geography, we are limited. And
Yes.
that's where, our mission for India Network turned out to be that success should not be constrained by geography.
Yes. Mhm.
So yeah, this was one of the examples that we figured that mentorship is so important. While I experienced it even in my own startup journey, despite the fact that I was not in a tier 2 town, I was in a metropolitan, I was in Gurgaon.
Mhm.
Despite that, I felt the lack of access to the right mentors. So
Mm.
tier 2 and tier 3, of course, are much worse when it comes to that kind of an access, because nowadays, and especially like a couple of years back, maybe 2 or 3 years back, everybody wanted to be a mentor. Everybody wanted to be seen as an investor. There was such a wannabeism to being a mentor, to being a coach, to being a consultant to a startup, that people did not know who is the right person to approach to. A lot of lot of people, in fact, in that process, also fooled these small startups by taking retainers, by taking consultant fees, but not really delivering anything. A lot of times these startup mentors and consultants were those people who did not even have the startup experience.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean those things happened, but I think while we were
Yes.
building India Network, which we still are, uh,
Mhm.
there still is a team who's working on building the community and giving them
Mm.
the kind of value that we set out to do. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's always interesting to know these startups, at the same time also to know startups and ventures who nail their narrative, who may
Mhm.
have a mediocre product, or may have a product which you think that ठीक है यार, मतलब इसमें कुछ ज्यादा दिमाग वाला चीज नहीं था, it's not like that big a disruption, but
Mhm.
what they have nailed is the narrative. A lot
Mm.
of times we see that there was this recent not a report, but yeah, a recent insight that some of the top startups of a country, a lot of unicorns, are barely making any revenues. They're making losses to the tunes of, I don't know, multiples of crores. And despite that, the kind of brand recall that they have created, it's
Mm.
all thanks to the narrative that they've built around that brand. So that's the reason that, we say that it is important to own your narrative.
Mm.
And there's not a single brand, there's not a single person. So there are
Mhm.
business as brands, and there are personal brands. So everybody, whether
Yeah.
you, whether me, everybody has a brand,
True.
and everybody has a narrative.
Mm.
Now the choice to own the narrative lies with you. whether you own your own narrative or whether the narrative is being built by people
Right.
around you. It is always better to own the narrative, because when it is left to the hands of people around you, it may not always be in your favor. It may not always be pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Got
So
it.
it is always important to take consistent, persistent efforts to nail your narrative
Hmm.
and own your narrative.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Like, I don't know whether as a customer I should feel bad, whether there are so many unicorns actually being able to not get a narrative that might not actually profit the customer. But being a person who's studying so many different startups, I feel they've done a great job. And like, that's a really nice advice. I think you should, in terms of personal branding, also you need to decide which windows of your house you want to open and portray. That's really nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think I should have started with this. Congrats on the funding that you had received from Indian DIF, and I think that's a huge feat as a startup. Right, in 2 years, less than 2 years. That's amazing. How
Yes.
was like
One and a
how
half
was the
year.
uh-huh. So how was the investing, like the investor meeting? Was it anything like Dragon's Den, the ones that we see?
No, it's not. It's not. I think we end up overhyping these meetings and things a little too much
Mhm.
to make them feel overwhelming and scary and out of the reach, but they're not. I think a lot of times the factor that, showing up is half, something that I say is that showing up is half the battle won. A lot of
Mhm.
times we don't show up because we are so critical of our own thoughts, of our own products, of our own stories, that we feel that, you know, we make a dragon's den in our own mind, Julian. It does not happen in real life. We just make it here that, oh, it is going to be like this and that, and they're going to rip me apart. Of course, when something that I've been often told is that when an investor invests into you, it is their money at risk. It is them putting their money at stake. So it is
Mhm.
in their interest to take utmost care of the founders that they invest in. So they
Oh.
don't they don't rip you apart, they don't slice you apart, they don't, put you across tortures and, demonic forces. Uh,
Mm.
it's in their interest that, you stay healthy, you stay mentally fit, you stay
Mhm.
joyful. So they ensure that, they take care of those things. Of
Mhm.
course, when, because they're also putting their money at stake, so it also means that you as a startup founder, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, have more responsibility.
Mhm.
So there's this line in Spider-Man, right? That with great power comes great responsibility. So in terms of the startup investments, I love to say that with great investments comes great responsibility, because
Mhm.
they're putting in money into you as a person, into you as an entrepreneur, into you as your team, more than the idea, because they
Mhm.
believe in what you can execute. There are a lot of people who may have a similar idea,
Mhm.
so why did they not invest into that? Why did they invest into you? They
Mhm.
invested in you because they saw your strengths, they saw your caliber and your teams, and that
Mhm.
you can execute what you are out to, say, and what you're trying to
Mhm.
invest and pitch.
Mhm.
So that's where they want to ensure that, okay, you know what, let me ensure that the startup that I'm working with, the startup that I'm investing in, has the maximum resources, has the maximum strategic alliances that I can offer from my side. So yeah, I think investors are some very helpful lot. It is
Mhm.
always advisable that, at least I say so, that it is better that you have a strategic investor than somebody
Mhm.
who's just putting in money, because then it becomes a little tasking and a taxing, kind of investment and a conversation at times, that you have to try to explain things which they might not always understand. They might look for instant ROIs, which may not always happen instantly, but somebody who's more strategic will ensure that they not only put money into your venture but also help open doorways, also help get you access to the right resources,
Mm-hmm.
and help you grow in the process, not only as a business but also as a person. So yeah, that's how the relationship between investors and startups are. They're not very dragon denish moments. It's all in the mind.
That's amazing. So talking about growing, like how is Wine Studio planning to scale? I think currently you have it's pan India, of course, but are you going global or are you planning to go to one specific country? What are your ambitions?
So we are, of course, it's content, right? And we are not really restricting ourselves from the perspective of geography, because
Mm-hmm.
content has the power to reach across countries. And even right now, it is what is beautiful is that whatever content we have created in terms of the podcast, the originals, or the ones that we're producing for various clients, has reached 148 countries. So, are we constrained by geography? Not really.
Mm-hmm.
And having said that, yes, when it comes to the existing content that has gone globally, it also makes sense that we produce content which caters specifically to them, which means going regional when it comes to the languages, which means
Mm-hmm.
that finding ways that they can get discovered in those places that they stay in. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody owns an Apple or an Android in tier two, in tier three, or in smaller towns or in other countries. There might be different devices or different things that they get access to. So finding ways to reach them despite these constraints when it comes to devices, platforms, apps. So, easing discovery of the content that caters to them is something that we are working on. And yes, of course, the content library in terms of the podcast that we already have will continue growing. We already have 8 shows, and the way we see it, we are targeting launching 50 shows this year and growing.
Beautiful.
So the team will also grow,
Mm-hmm.
and the number of creators that we work with who host the show or who are a part of the process of creating a show will also increase. And that will also mean that there will be people from across the country, from outside the country, which is already happening. But yeah, so that will continue to happen. And yes, let's see where we go. But lofty, or something that is known in the management
Mm-hmm.
terms or management jargons, is BHAG, BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. So that's what we have. A lot of time, those big, hairy, audacious goals are very scary, but they are exciting nonetheless and worth every penny and every moment to be invested into.
Definitely wishing you all the best on that. That's beautiful. So I do have no idea how do you manage 8 shows and going ahead to 50, but I'm sure you've put in all. Like I think you're planning and on how to deliver each one with extreme dedication. I think every client looks out for something different, but and help me understand this, like how do clients like HP or bigger clients, what do they have to do with podcasts? Like do they always go via the audio route, or like I think you do video as well, content, so could you explain how big companies try to reach out to you, and then how are they reaching their customers via you?
Yeah. So what has happened, Julian, in current times, especially I think pandemic showcased it beautifully, is that we all looking at us as consumers before we talk about brands and how we really support brands, stepping into the shoes of the consumer, the end consumer, the listener or the viewer.
Mm.
Everybody wants to do more in less time.
Mm.
What that means is, and let me rephrase it this way, everybody wants to do more in less, whether it is time, whether it is money, whether it is effort, whether it is energy, anything that they invest or that they're willing to invest, they want more out of it.
Mm.
There's never an equation where they want almost the same, right? So everybody wants more ROI.
Mm.
Now, what that means when it comes to what we are doing is that every consumer, everybody, you, me, anybody that we know of who has access to content, whether it is through a mobile, whether it is
Mm.
through a laptop, whether it is through radio, whether it is through TV, anything where we access content, brands are trying to bring your attention to them.
Mm.
Everybody is wanting a slice of your attention, of
True.
my attention.
Okay.
So if I am completely glued into visual content or textual content, imagine how much it drains my energy as a consumer.
True.
If I'm continuously just looking into a Zoom call, looking into a video on YouTube, watching Netflix, binge watching, at the end of the day, I feel so wasted. While it is great that there's so much content that I end up consuming, but I feel wasted. My energies feel low.
Mm.
So, do I have the power to, after that, look into the brand that probably popped up in that video? Do I have the power to really go back and check, oh, which was the brand that advertised during this particular content that I watched?
Mm.
We get
Not at all.
tired, we get
Not
exhausted.
at all.
And that's where the Zoom fatigue or the Zoom gloom last year started popping
Start.
up. That everybody was just getting so tired of being on the video throughout the day that they just felt exhausted and they just wanted that personal connection.
Mm.
At the same time, the pandemic tells us that abhi to personal connection or live interactions, live events are a little far off. We still have to live with the virtual concept of
Mm.
connecting.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then how do brands really reach out meaningfully to their customers, to their end consumers?
Mm-hmm.
Audio as a medium provides for that.
Mm-hmm.
The way it provides for it is that I may be doing household chores, but yet I can in the background play my favorite podcast or a piece of content that a brand has to share, or the narrative that a brand has to share. I may be driving and yet I may be putting on that piece of content. I can listen to it, I can still consume it. I may be in a salon, I may be just going out for my walks or jogs or gymming or whatever I may be doing, but I can
Mm-hmm.
always, I have the, I'm
Liberty.
empowered as a consumer to still consume that content without draining myself. And I'm doing more in less time.
Mm-hmm.
While I am jogging, I'm still listening to something, and it is highly likely that I'm going to retain it.
Mm-hmm.
Research shows that people do retain it if the storytelling is done beautifully, if the
Mm-hmm.
content, if the integration of the brand is done in a very interesting way and not overt. So there's
Mm-hmm.
covert marketing, there's overt marketing. Overt is in your face, covert is subtle. It could be through brand integrations, it could be through nice seamless brand positioning in those small subtle ways, storytelling, building it up in the storytelling of the brand, of the content. And that's how people retain it, that's how people make connections. We're all wired for stories. As humans, we're all wired for stories. So when a brand comes somewhere in the story
Mm-hmm.
and creates a certain connection that I resonate with, I'm
Mm-hmm.
likely to check it out if it is meaningful for me.
Got it.
So that's the power of audio, and that's what brands are now looking at. And
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, with social audio apps like Clubhouse coming in, Fireside coming in India, Leher coming in, I think audio as a medium is something that brands are just getting excited about. It's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
yeah, that's where we are at.
That's amazing. I mean, you helped explain that it really well. So, talking about storytelling, one of my favorite podcasts are those that are created by Wondery, and I love the way they add sound effects. Of if you're in a cafe, you can hear the sound of a cafe, or if you're in a car, you can hear the door closing. So, in your content creation, do you focus on creating those elements? Could you explain a process? Like I know some I've read something some in some places like how certain graphic designers go and spend years researching on what is that critical thing to add or that sound. What would one content creation process look like for Wine Studio?
So yeah, I think Wondery as a studio, as a media house, is something that, as a podcast producer, is something that we even love. And like you rightly said, that they create those small elements that make you feel that you're there, right?
Mm,
That's the power of audio content. That's the power of podcasts. They are like basically theater of the mind.
exactly.
That's how we put it across. And for us, one of the shows that does this beautifully is a show called Heirs of the Pandavas, which is created and hosted by Nikesh Murali, who's himself an award-winning podcaster. And Heirs of the Pandavas also won the award, the Golden Crane Award.
Wow.
And with just 10 episodes, we ended up garnering, I think that was the first time in the history of Indian podcasting for sure, that purely organically, without placing big hoardings, or
Mm,
without doing too much jazz and pomp around a podcast, with just 10 episodes, we ended up getting a listenership of 100,000. We had
wow.
100,000 downloads. So, which is big organically in the podcasting scenario.
Mm,
And why did that happen? Because the storytelling, the sound effects, the sound design, when so it's a basically Heirs of the Pandavas is this mythological thriller, very
mhm.
contemporary. It is centuries down from the battle of when the battle of Mahabharata happened. So it's centuries down from there. It's the heirs of the Pandavas who are taking forward the journey, the lineage taking forward the journey, who will be at the
Mm,
end fighting who are in every
wow.
story fighting a demon, and how they're doing it. So there are those scenes of battles, of sword fights,
Mhm.
of things happening, of animals because they're in a jungle, and the various characters that Nikesh has created. And you listen to it, it gives you goosebumps. It's something that I love calling Heirs of the Pandavas is this show, which is basically a Sanjay Leela Bansali production in audio, kind of a feeler.
Wow. I'm gonna check it out right after
Please
this.
do. Please do. That's what I love telling people, that it's one production that we're so proud of, especially the team, the work that the team has done, the audio designer, the
Mhm,
entire team,
mhm,
and what really goes into it. So there's another show that we've been working on, and that's more around that's without giving too much into the details of the show. So let me put it that it has things to do with the armed forces. Okay.
mhm,
And that means that you cannot, so when we were speaking to the team that this is the show that we want to do, so what are your ideas, what do we do? So that,
mhm,
when you ask what really goes into the content creation process and the
mhm,
whole sound design process to make it very immersive for the end
mhm,
listener.
mhm,
So for us to even think that, okay, this battle was fought, let's say in 71. So
mhm,
71 May,
mhm,
which were the kind of choppers or
mhm,
tanks or the technology when it comes to the
mhm,
whole armed forces that were using us time pe, what were the ones that were existing, that were being used? Because obviously in these many decades, uh,
mhm.
our tanks, our
That's right.
weaponry, everything has artillery, everything has changed, right? It has all progressed.
Yes.
So उस टाइम जो आर्टिलरी और ये सब चीज़ें यूज़ होती थी, what did
Mm,
they sound like? So to do the
mhm,
research to that granular level, that if, for example, there was a certain chopper that was being used, what did
mhm.
that sound like? because if we have to probably recreate some moments from there, then we
Mm.
need to know what it sounds like. Otherwise, it will not sound
True,
authentic. You can't just
true,
do a
true.
kind of a noise and expect a listener to think that okay, this is a chopper sound. But if you have to really make it
Got
very immersive, rich, and
it.
detailed at a granular level so that the end listener enjoys it and really
Mm.
goes raving about it, you have to go deep down into the research that what does this sound really sound like? Why
Mm.
does, why this and why not that? And so
Mhm.
many other things, the finer things that you have to take care of. Also, what we are now increasingly working on is that whenever a show is heavily produced, which means there's a lot of sound design, which means
Mm.
there's a lot of sound effects into the show, then trying to create a 360-degree experience.
Oh, both ears.
Oh, yeah. So, for example, if there's in fact, in Heirs of the Pandavas, so
Mhm.
if the scene is about a bow and an arrow, and the arrow is just coming across and about
Mm.
to kill somebody, so you'll hear it from your one ear and then go out the other.
My goodness.
So those kind of things, and
That's
yeah,
amazing.
that's the finer things that go into the creation process.
Wow.
It's very heavily researched from
Mhm.
every aspect, not just the content, not just the storytelling, but also from the perspective of sound design. And of course, at the end of it, you have to look at what is it, what's in it for the listener. Why would they listen to this? Why would they give you time from their share of टाइम बिकॉज़ टाइम सबके पास लिमिटेड है, वही 24 आवर्स है। तो मैं वाइन
Mm.
स्टूडियो के पॉडकास्ट में अपना टाइम क्यों इन्वेस्ट करूँ? नो व्हाट्स इन
Mm.
इट फॉर मी एट द एंड ऑफ द डे? So that's something that goes as the foundation of the content creation process, and then we continue to build on it.
Beautiful. That is so amazing. And the dedication you have to research, like 1971. Wow. I'm looking forward to all of your podcasts. The thing is, I think you distribute a lot in Apple Podcasts. And I think, what is in terms of your distribution, do you focus on iOS only or Android only? I remember you mentioning you try to reach out in different channels in places where people don't have access to that. What do you look at in general once you've created something? How does the distribution happen?
So we distribute across on all broadcasting platforms, which includes
Mhm.
Apple, which includes Spotify, which includes Ghana, which includes Wink, which includes
Oh,
Amazon,
yes.
which includes Hubhopper. So
Mhm.
Castbox, we're there on every platform which caters to various devices. It could be Samsung, it could be the Android ecosystem, it could be iOS, it could be web. So we're there
Mhm.
everywhere. From the
Mhm.
perspective of the visibility, we're there everywhere.
Mhm.
And in fact, what has been interesting and what has been very notable for us is the shift from the perspective of consumption. When we started off, we saw there was heavy consumption on iOS platforms.
Mhm.
There was heavy consumption on Apple. But
Mhm.
now we see that all of our podcasts are heavily being consumed on Android. And Ghana.com, for that matter, has proven to be a very surprising insight for us. The way
Mhm.
Ghana is almost standing equal
Correct.
to the consumption on Apple is very surprising for us, because we thought कि यार जो भी है, podcast is still a very urban millennial phenomenon. It's
Mhm.
still being consumed in urban cities more than it is being consumed in tier 2, tier 3. But
Mhm.
Ghana.com continues to surprise us. The way the listenership has spiked there and
Mhm.
across various cities. It's interesting, it's notable, and something that we are in fact working more towards to find that how can we be discovered better in tier 2, tier 3, so that we can also start creating content for them specifically in their languages. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's been the insight so far.
Beautiful. I think Ghana reaches out to even the youngsters who hardly listen to stories or read books nowadays. But the younger generation, I think your journey is going to reach them in a way that others can't. Like, I'm pretty sure none of my younger cousins read books anymore. So things like Hooked TV or I think podcasts via Ghana might be the only source to reach out to fiction and good stories, basically, because anybody who reads books is able to reach out to all of those different minds and creators and authors. That I think is now coming in terms of these apps, and that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is.
So, like, do you focus on adding, like, is there like in terms of your the way you mentioned the insights, like, do you use AI in any of this? Because like I come from the ML background, so I kind of want to know how, if you have done any kind of, like, I'm sure you do a lot of analytics, but has AI helped you discover either content or your audience, any of those sort? If
So, good you asked this question. And in fact, good you told me your strengths because we might just want to look at how we can, you know, pick your brains. Uh, so, we know the power of AI. Though I'm not a person from a tech background, but having been so invested into startups and being aware of what's developing, I do see that there's a very strong use case of AI into what we are doing because it's at the end of the day content that's being consumed.
Mhm.
So there is definitely scope. Are we able to leverage it right now? Not right now because there are various other limitations.
Mhm.
So which we are now working towards, which I
Mhm.
cannot go into detail on because that's all work in progress and may not be right to share right now. But yes, absolutely that, the fact that there's so much right now we have 8 shows, right? And we have a listenership and total downloads of over about 7.5 lakhs. So
Mhm.
all these people who are listening and consuming this content, where what are they most consuming, to
Mhm.
where are they stopping, to when are they coming back, what is it that they're listening to, where do they
Mhm.
come from, what demographics, and so many other things, the slicing and dicing of data.
Mhm.
As much as a CEO I want to get more insights from data, there are certain limitations that we have because platforms do provide us dashboards and analytics, but there are certain limitations to that kind of a data also. As of now we don't own that consumer data, so for us
Mhm.
to be able to leverage ML and then have a strong use case of AI into our content, that's
Mhm.
something that's work in progress that we have planned. It's not even work in progress, that's something that's in our part of the journey forward.
Mhm.
So we are not right now leveraging it, but yes, do we want to? Will we? Absolutely. That's the answer. And maybe I might just pick your brains on that. That why don't you come on board and help us understand what we can do?
Because I have been seeing how AI can actually predict what is the next thriller and what is going to be a hit amongst masses. So, not that I'm a fan of AI taking over creativity, but it can do a lot in terms of content creation. Because there is this Cura story. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. The founder is a data scientist, Tiffany, and she mentions how she uses AI to connect content creators to brands that helps content creators monetize their content. Like, it could be an athlete or it could be a singer. So what brands do I get connected to? So how does WYN Studio do this? Like, how do you connect your clients with the correct brands to monetize their content? Could you walk me through that process?
Yeah. So, of course, right now we are not in a position where we are able to, like I said, that we're not able to leverage
Mm-hmm.
AI to be able to give those kind of insights. But yes, uh, brands because they understand the power of audio and the potential that
Mhm.
audio holds when it comes to reaching the end consumer, even if it's not a big, uh, even if it's not as big a mass as a video can create, even if it's a small subset. But the kind of conversions, the kind of leaning in that brands see when it comes to audio, they are now looking at sponsoring content. They're looking at integrating the brand into the storytelling. They're looking
Mhm.
at getting in-house podcasts produced from us.
Mhm.
So that is what is happening when it comes to the way we are dealing with brands. How are we helping brands monetize? That is something that we do not have. So if we are doing a branded content,
Mhm.
how is the brand really monetizing from that piece of, if we run a campaign? So yeah, we will probably get insights that, okay, what is the kind of conversions that have happened from this
Mhm.
campaign, how many impressions and how many people have really taken action. So all of those insights, of course, a campaign manager that our media host providers give us, it is still small, so
Mhm.
it's not as enticing right now.
Mhm.
But will it be enticing when discoverability gets better, when there's more insights and data based decisions being taken? Like you
Mhm.
said, that when AI can predict what will be the next best thriller when it comes to podcast, and what is the going to the best next best piece of content that people would like to consume across various genres. So those are the kind of things that will help brands in the decision making
Mhm. Mhm. Got
and
that.
help brands monetize better. So
Okay.
yeah, we will get there. It's something that's, again,
Mhm.
something we aspire to build, but we're not there yet.
Awesome. So, like, I think so. Who is your like? I'm not sure if that's the right way to put it. Like, who is your competitor in terms of a studio in India? If you were to name any, I'm not. Is it okay to name any?
I i as a person do not believe in
Competition.
competition. I believe in collaboration. And
Wow.
it's not something that I say from the perspective of being diplomatic or being sweet, because right
Mhm.
now, again, for the industry to be able to grow, we have to
Mhm.
collaborate with various partners. We have to collaborate. It's still in a phase where we need to create more awareness. People still need to
Mhm.
know what podcast is. People still need to know, brands still need to know why should we invest. So we do not really see. In fact, we do constantly speak to various studios, to various platforms and people who are in this industry, to see whether we can collaborate in terms of knowledge sharing, whether we
Mhm.
can collaborate in terms of co-producing, whether we
Mhm.
can collaborate in any way, because that's how you will bring more eyeballs to this industry. You will bring
Mhm.
more attention and
Yes.
visibility.
Mhm.
So I, as a person, I'm always up for collaborations. Okay,
Mhm.
competition, healthy competition is always good, but do not see anybody as a competition. I'm
Mhm.
just that's just me as a person.
But it is a one of a kind of thing. Like I've not seen other businesses come up in the names like yours did. So I asked this to all of my guests. Like, if you were to name in the past 2 years your top three challenges, I know there was a pandemic in between, but if it has helped you, or if there were three that you wanted to name, what would be your challenges?
So personally, I think for me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I should be able to. So of course, every business had its own share of challenges, right? That for us, for example, as a business,
Mm-hmm.
we saw that while because we registered in September 2019, and post that, December, January, February went into actively pitching to various brands, and
Mm-hmm.
March 2020 happened, and
Mm-hmm.
after that, suddenly every brand just retrenched when it came to their budgets to be able to look at spending
Mm-hmm.
into audio content.
Mm-hmm.
So for us at that point in time, did it scare us? Of course it did. Both me
Mm-hmm.
and Vijay, and we did not know what to do next. Yet
Mm-hmm.
we knew that there has to be something done. We cannot just give up. We cannot just give up hope. So we did what we had to do. We created wine originals. And yeah, since then there's been no looking back. But more than the challenges that we have faced as a business, I think what I see is the challenges that I've personally faced as an entrepreneur, as a founder.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the belief, one of the biggest challenges has been that sometimes as an entrepreneur, your ego takes the better of you and you feel that you know everything. And that was the case with me till the time I realized that I don't know everything and it's all right that I don't know everything. I humbled down.
Mm-hmm.
Second was that my need for perfection. I,
Arulpur.
yeah, and I do not, I as a person just am a very, a perfectionist by nature. I want things in a certain way. I get my OCDs. If an Excel sheet is not properly done, if the fonts are not okay,
Oh,
if they're not rightly color coded or highlighted, or if the document has wrong font, anything, you
my
know,
goodness.
or if a deck has to be sent to a potential client, if it is not in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
it used to irk me. It used to make me feel like I cannot send this till the time it is perfect. And that has been one of the biggest challenges that I've overcome in the past year and a half. I have realized that it's all right. It's important to go to market. It's important to go
Mm-hmm.
out there. It's important to show up. It's not important that it has to be perfect, because your levels and your standards of perfection is not something that people judge you on.
True.
It's important to be there when it is. So right time is important. Timing it right is very important. If you've spoken and standing up to your commitments is very important. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these are a couple of things that. And the third has been again very ego driven, that I know I'm right,
Mm-hmm.
and not being open to other point of views. So that again stemmed from a very egocentric, um, you know, persona, but again have cracked it, and I know that it's all right. I am not always right. I need to be open to listening.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have realized that over this year and a half of this journey with wine that we have created, I've become so much better a listener. I ask more questions instead of continuing to tell what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about delegating, but also letting people take ownership. Sometimes as business owner, we are not okay to let go of control. We want to do things in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and it drives us nuts if we are not in control. So letting people take decisions, not micromanaging. So all of those
Mm-hmm.
things have come over a period of this time with building this venture and this baby. And these have been the three critical challenges that I've faced as a business owner, and I've also come across, have sailed through, so to say.
Wow. That's really nice. Thank you for sharing. I think a lot of women have this, like, and the more I talk to women business owners, perfectionism is something that I think even content creators, like if I'm writing a blog on Medium, I will not publish it. Like I'll have 57 unpublished drafts and I'll have like 30 articles because I'm just too scared to put it out there. But I think we have all learned like it's okay to take one step at a time, and it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. If I were to just ask you quickly, do you think there are any obstacles for women to start companies? Like, is there any reluctance in terms of uh, like you've been so successful, you've had investors trust you, and I think there is a common notion that investors don't like investing in women-led businesses, and there's a lot of rumors out there and confusion. So I just wanted to uh, disbar anything that's there today.
I think one of the biggest things, Julian, is imposter syndrome. I have been there too.
Mm.
doubting your own capabilities, thinking that you are an imposter, thinking that you're not enough, you don't deserve it, thinking that whatever's coming your way is just by default, it is not something that you've designed. I have been there multiple times. I have, and I'm not kidding, that so many times that I have criticized myself like I am the worst, I'm my own worst critique,
Mm.
and telling myself that, uh, you know what, this has just happened, this has not been done by you, you're not even capable of doing this. um, and so many other stories that I gave myself,
Mm.
telling myself each and every time that, dude, you are an imposter, you're not even real. So I think a lot of women do that. It's not that men do not do that. Our conditioning is such that women end up doing it a little more.
Mhm.
More women end up doing it over men, but it is always important to take charge of that inner voice. That's what I've learned. Of course, it has been also because I've found the right mentors that I've been able to recognize that and been able to take charge of it. But the reason we don't end up seeing as many women founders is because a lot of women end up stopping themselves short when it comes to taking that first step, thinking that नहीं अगर ठीक से नहीं हुआ तो, if it does not succeed, if I do not find the customers, and so many other things, the ifs and buts are never ending. We just do
True.
not stop questioning ourselves. But all I say is that take the dive, you'll either fly or you'll fall. But either way, if you fly, great. If you fall, you will learn and you'll rise up again. And what I love to go back to when I even speak on various stages is this part where, when we were kids, when we were toddlers, let alone kids, we were toddlers, when we were trying to learn to walk, the first few steps, we fell. After that, again, tried to walk again, we fell. There's so many times that we used to fall that even those bruises, our parents and people around us used to cheer us up. It's okay, it's okay, it's all right, get up, it's all right, theek hai, kuch nahi hua. You're a strong girl, you're a strong boy. All those things that people used to tell us.
Mm.
When we grow up, people do not tell us these things.
Mm.
Then failure becomes a stigma, failure becomes a taboo, and it's
Mm.
not something that people want to own up. Nobody likes to be seen as a failure. We glamorize success, we overhype unicorns, we overhype funded startups, we do not give the due share of importance and glory to bootstrapped startups or people who have started off but failed. We do
Mm.
not give them as much importance. And since we do not do that, so that fear of failing continues to just dig deeper.
Mm.
And that's where, you cannot take charge of the narrative that people are saying. You cannot take charge of the narrative that the media is building, but you can take
Mm.
charge of your own narrative that I started off saying when we began this conversation, that having said, having been through whatever your journey is, if you believe in your idea, even that one person standing up tall and finding your first customer, if you have one customer, that means you will have many customers. But at least get that one customer, create value for that one customer,
Mhm.
and continue to do it consistently. I think one of the key things again that I've learned is that showing up consistently is what really makes you successful. Consistency means that there's a compounding effect that you create. जैसे
Mm.
फाइनेंसेस में कंपाउंडिंग इफेक्ट होता है, दैट यू इन्वेस्ट एवरी डे और एवरी मंथ, एंड द
Mm.
money compounds, the interest compounds, and if you start investing 5,000 today, another 10 years, 15 years, you might have a corpus of 1 cr, but you don't start by investing 1 cr. right?
Mm.
So you do not start with success. You create success, you build success. So that's one message that I love to give to a lot of women, that just start. ठीक है, worst case scenario, it would not go anywhere. Worst case scenario, you will fail. Worst case scenario, you will have losses. But how would you know if you do not even start?
Got it.
You fail at 100% of the shots you do not take. So if you do not take that shot, how would you even know where it is going, whether it will fly or whether it will fall? So just start, and you'll find, if you have a mindset of growth, you'll find the right partners, you'll find the right investors, you'll find the right mentors. But if your mindset is of constraints, where you
Mhm.
only look at ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, राइट एनवायरनमेंट नहीं है, राइट कस्टमर्स नहीं है, राइट टाइम नहीं है, if all you're looking at is constraints, then you are doomed, then you're
Mm.
bound to fall. But if you
Got
start off with a growth mindset, that okay, you know what, I know that I've found my first customer and there is potential, I will take it forward and then I'll see where it goes.
it. Mm.
At worst, I will have my learnings, which I'll apply to my own journey or my own personal growth. Or I might just become a leadership coach someday because I've experienced this journey. Because आजकल तो life coaching and leadership coaching and
What's
coaching
that?
as a business has just boomed. So it
Mm.
does not. You cannot coach if you do not have your own life lessons to share.
Got it.
So, yeah, I think those are the few things that I love sharing, and I'm very passionate about telling women that, you know what, just get started. Uh,
Thank you.
Whatever the voice inside of your head says, if it says things which disempower you, which tell you that you're not worth it, then just tell the voice that please, just shut up. Whatever you have to say, just you can continue saying, but I'm still going to do it. I'm still stubborn, I'll still do it.
That's,
So, yeah.
so I think it's like the inner narrative and your narrative to the world. So that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, you've given your 2 cents to the world out there who's listening, and you've introduced our listeners to the power of audio. And there's so many key takeaways from this. And thank you so much for your time as well. Wishing you all the success. I think you're even if you feel like you're ahead of time right now, I'm sure this is gonna go big. So wishing you and your teammates a lot of successes here. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. I loved the conversation, and thank you for bringing me on board to your podcast. Would love to share it, would love to bring you more women who you might want to speak to,
Definitely.
and continue on this journey, because you'll meet some very interesting people. And I'm very, very sure that that will also help you build as a person, because you're learning from such rich experiences and people who've come with such depth, that when you grow into your professional journey or entrepreneurial journey, whatever you take on, there will be so much for you to apply into your life. So, all the very best with
Thank you.
whatever you're doing.
Thank you. Wish you all the best. Bye.
Thank you. And when I
Thank
come to
you.
Indore, I'll probably have some Indori
Haan,
chaat and food at Sarafa
Johnny
Bazaar, and I'll give you a
Hotdog.
call. Yes.
Definitely. I'll take you there.
All right,
Bye.
Julian.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye.
That's it for today. Hope you liked it. If you enjoyed this episode, do share it with your friends. And don't forget to hit follow on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stay tuned for more episodes and stay safe.